Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be in a country whose people 7 years ago pushed their government to save the life of 33 ordinary people. We in the world were not only shocked, but we admired the way you solved this human, almost catastrophic. So I'm very proud, and I would like to thank you, Jose and Carmen, Professor Jose and Professor Carmen, for inviting me here to your country to meet with lovely educators, with people whose life goal, I would say, is to educate the next generation of Chile. Hopefully, they will follow the current generation when it comes to human life. So thank you very much. I would like to start, let me see if I know what to do with this. Yeah. So I would like to start, where is the other one? The microphone? Where is the microphone? I must move, I can't stand in the podium. Oh, yeah, thanks. So I would like to start today with trying to give you a more universal, not Anglo-American, but what universal way to look at our field, educational administration, leadership, whatever. I would like to provide you with some historical, because without history, there is no present and there is no future. And then to move on and ask, so what's so special about our context? Usually what we learn is the context of Anglo-American, as Jose said, the Anglo-American. But the rest of the world is different from the context of Anglo-American countries. And I would like to probe into this context to better understand our work. Our work means as researchers, as principals, as teachers, because I can distinguish between researchers and practitioners. So let's start by understanding what we are talking about. We are talking about academic life. We are talking about disciplines. What is a discipline? The discipline is something that creates the university. Without disciplines, without field of study, there is no university. So if we look at the discipline, I would like to talk about my discipline, because a decade ago, I think it was, I woke up, let's call it, woke up shivering. Why? Because I thought to myself, what would happen when I get to the age of 80 and asking myself if I wasted my time, my life for nothing? So what is my job as a university researcher? What is my contribution to those outside of the university, to those in the educational practice? So I read and read philosophy of sciences, I read history of science, I read about sociology and about other disciplines. And then I realized that I work in a field which is an applied field of study. We have theories, we do research, but it's not a research for its own sake. It's not a knowledge for its own sake. It's a knowledge that other people should use it for something in their job, in their work. And this is what I would like. And if we understand that we are in an applied field of study, we can't disconnect our work from our context, from our values, culture. That's why I started by telling you why I admire your country, your people. Because when I read the story of the 33 miners, I thought to myself that I'm going to a country whose value are like mine in my country. And we saw many cases of saving other people's life. Oh, I forgot. So let's move and see. So what is an applied field of study? I'm not going to give you here a lesson of philosophy of science. Don't worry. I just want to make sure that we are all speak on in the same language, which means that we all know that we are responsible for the producing of knowledge that has a potential to help other people. And if this is what is our job, either in the university or as educator in other system, if this is what we are going to do, I would like to tell you that this is a very bad job. I always like to argue with businessmen. I don't know how it is in this country, but in my country, sometimes I'm invited to a symposium, and there is always the businessman who made a lot of money. And he comes with solution to education. and he or she says, I know how to solve the educational system, solve as if it is ill, okay? So I'll leave it aside for a moment. I say, you know what I want? Give me only 4 hours in a junior high school. Not more than that. In the 7th and 8th grades. If you succeed in teaching these students, I am going to listen to any solution you have. But I bet in myself, he will run away after 15 minutes. Because if you don't feel, if you don't touch children, pupils, not touch physically, I mean touch the environment. If you don't touch the environment of the classroom, how can you tell me what to do? Which means that I am here. I don't know what I'm doing, but I hope that what I'm going to do is related to other people's works. And if I didn't touch their work, not only personally, but in my research, so how can I come and say, do this or not do this? So I will elaborate on it. I will extend this issue because after all, when we close the door of the classroom, we are there without anybody else unless in our mind, okay? So this is something that so who are those you aim to guide, assist, provide with solution? This is a very good question, but to answer it, let's talk about history a moment, okay? History. So it all began here, very unsurprisingly, okay? Here. It all began in 1875. The first book, the first textbook for school principal written in the United States. They wanted to guide their principals because this is the time of industrialization, of urbanization, of everything that is connected to our world, and the time of building big schools. No more. When I was a child, I don't know how you call it here in this country, but there was a program, it's called A Little House in the Desert, something like that. Would you like to tell it in Spanish?
La pequeña casa en la pradera.
Okay? So I remember there was one classroom, one teacher, mixed aged class, okay? They didn't talk about distinguish between ages. Nobody ever thought about a school principal. Who needs it? But when the one class became 2 classes and 3 classes and so on, they wanted principal. In those years, they didn't call principal educational leaders. We will get there, okay? But not yet. So only during the 60s of the 20th centuries, I mean almost century afterwards, we see that the field is moving to Australia, no, this is, I don't know why it's supposed to be here, okay? No, not here, okay? It's supposed to be here. Maybe when they change. No, not to North Africa, no. But, okay? But it was to England. Only during the 60s, the English people start talking about preparing school principals, okay, to the job. Because before that, every teacher, like in this country, or it was in this, I don't know, every teacher could become a principal, just because the supervisor thought he or she are suitable. So, you see, so it became an Anglo-American field of study. When we read journal papers in English, when we read most of the books about education administration / leadership / management in English, it's not about our context mostly. I mean those who live in the rest of the world, which is the majority of the world, okay? But about the culture in which the Anglo-American principle lives and works. Don't forget it. Because if you forget it, you try to introduce knowledge that is irrelevant to your own life. And I will want to emphasize it later on. But still, we are in history, okay? My purpose will be, first, to question the universality of our field, of our knowledge, as I said before. Second, to emphasize the need to produce local knowledges. I want to urge you to produce local knowledges, either empirically or philosophically. Every teacher is a potential producer of knowledge. Think about our life. How much knowledge we have acquired throughout our career cycle. So much. So This is something that I would like to emphasize and to suggest some implications for principal preparation programs. Okay? And you can, I say principal preparation programs because this is something that is very popular in Anglo-American countries, including my country. But you can translate this concept to your own organizations. I'm not talking about this as, I'm not going to glorify this concept. I just use it because it is very popular in the English-speaking countries. Okay? And, okay, can the field of apply to Latin America? That's what I'm asking today. Can we apply a field that is rooted, that is grounded in a different culture in other cultures? Okay? We can and we can't. If I say yes, we can't, I will be like Obama. I don't want so. We can and we can't at the same time. Okay? So we don't want to. I don't want to risk myself now by citing other leaders. Okay? So can we incorporate principles of modern administration? I don't know. Let's move on. Okay? I will with this one. Okay? So just want to put it. Put it here. I will see. Okay. So let's ask ourselves what we are talking about. What is a field called educational administration? Some of you work, I understand, in the Department of Educational Leadership. Some in other programs or related programs. But what is it? As I told you, I didn't want to get to the age of 80 and say, oh, I wasted my time on nothing. There is nothing in talking about educational administration. I didn't want to be there. So I started asking questions using the literature, of course, as every professor does. Okay? So I would like to bring Ron Glatter. Ron Glatter is an 87 years old English professor. Okay, I met him several times. Brilliant so far. And he tried to understand. So he said, educational management, those who work in the Department of Educational Administration / leadership, they are concerned with the internal operation of educational institution. They want to know how a principal is going to lead his staff or is going to solve problems. Because, and this is something that will align my presentation, school is a unique organization. It is not like any other organization, let alone or especially not an industrial or commercial organization. School is what we call a loosely coupled system. It is not a system that we can find elsewhere, maybe in some colleges, but very different. So if it's different, I want to better understand how to run it. How to make teacher work is not like how make workers in a mine or in a factory work. It's different, and it's different also from hospitals. Because something is different. When we go to school, when we enter to schools, what we see is classes. And every class has its own door. So in every class, there is a unique reality, subjective reality, okay? So if I don't understand it as a principle, I'm going to lose. I'll tell you an anecdote. During the 90s in Israel, they believed in the Ministry of Education that they are going to save the local educational system by recruiting generals from the army. I'm sure some of you have heard about the Israeli army, very good army, very strong army, with very strong general. So let's recruit our generals to make order in the schools, to teach the teachers what work means. Okay? You know what happened? 1 year, they survived the job. Most of them run away from school because you can't run a school if you don't understand in teaching, and you can't understand in teaching if you didn't teach in your life in classroom. So this is something else. They can be a military general. They can go to high tech, for example, but they can't come to school. This is something that I would like to emphasize, because if it wasn't like that, we all could go and study management in business administration. Why do we need educational administration? So if we bear it in our mind, it's something that will take us to better understand our students, our teachers, those who want to be principal or any other job, okay? So the content, that's what I want. So it has all begun many years ago, okay? Many years ago I said, okay, I don't want to, there was Taylorism, you probably heard. Do you teach, Carmen, about Taylor and all the history? So, okay, so I don't have to elaborate on it. Taylorism, the Hawthorne, and there was someone called Callahan. He wrote his book in 69, okay, 1969. He tried to understand, he said things about practitioners, about professors, all the problems we still face. What is an applied field of study? And then the human relation, the Hawthorne research, I'm not going to elaborate, I'm sure. This is the introduction to any course in management. So just to remember that, okay? So it began in some way or another from business administration. But after, let's say, around 40 years, they realized they can't use... They realized, thanks, that means that I'm very enthusiastic to be here with you, okay? Okay, so they realized, okay? They realized, does it work? Yeah. Thanks. I'll try to be a good boy now, okay? So they realized that they need something more pragmatic. So you know who taught in principal preparation programs? Former principal and former supervisor and former superintendents. But if you teach based on your own experience, you are very closed-minded. You are very limited. Remember what I said about mentoring relations, okay? Remember how dangerous a mentor can be if he is closed-minded. Just a comment for the future. So knowledge context in the 60s. So then, in the 60s, the first journal in the field, Journal of Educational Administration Quarterly, those who in the academic department know what I mean. So what they wanted to know, they wanted to know more about supervisors, for example. In those here, they call, people in the United States, they call them inspectors, okay, which is different from now in many respects. And they wanted to know about democratic leadership. They didn't call it participative leadership or shared leadership. They say democracy. And they wanted to know more about how to train principals. Because if you don't direct your effort, academic or empirical efforts, towards the practice, why are you there? What is your contribution? Why do we have to invest money in your department? Ask the public or the government, okay? And educational change. Do you think that it has changed considerably? Let's see, okay? Whose values do this topic represent, by the way? The values of the American people, okay? Because in many parts of the world, change has never been glorified. Change has never been the target of every human being. In many other, tradition is not less important than change, which means that a balance should be the best way to look at the world, okay? And let's look at the 80s, okay? Let's look at the 80s. 80s, we can all remember the 80s and so on and so on. Evaluation, accountability. This is the time of the Iron Woman. Do you know who was the Iron Woman? Thatcher. Okay, Prime Minister Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, called her the Iron Woman, okay? And Ronald Reagan, the former actor, Ronald Reagan, they brought with them the spirit of accountability, of evaluation. Everything should be accountable, which means we don't believe you teachers, we will follow your work, we know that behind the door you do nothing, okay? That was the spirit, okay? If we try to understand it. There is a wonderful book from 91 called The Blame of Teacher. Let's blame the teachers for everything as if they are the parents, the real parents of all the students in the class. So you know that only between 15 to 25% or 30% of the impact on student achievement is of the teacher, okay, of the school. The rest is genes, community, mind, I don't know, all the rest. So if we understand that, we want to know, but we don't believe in that. We want science, we want professional development, we want school effectiveness. But there is one problem. No one ever found the only one and best way to teach. There is no one universal definition of the best teacher, of best teaching practices. Every definition of good teaching is highly contextualized, is very cultural. You can't distinguish your subjective world from your definitions of teaching, of good leadership, okay? For example, when Israel was established in 1948, our leader had, the prime minister had a hair, he was very short, and his hair was like that. Bald in the middle, hair like this, white, okay? Nobody would see him as a leader in our time, no one. Because in our time, if you don't, what we call on the screen, okay, you are not a leader, okay? That's why he prevented the establishment of the Israeli television channel until he retired. Because he knew in his heart that he is not going to be popular when they see his face on the television, okay? What it means that your leadership, your beliefs in what a good leader should do is highly contextualized, okay? So, school effectiveness, let's measure everything. So sorry to be cynical about paperwork, about reports, but I can tell you that in many countries, I'm sure also in North America, teachers only sign, change the date, and send the same report year after year. Why? They believe something else. But in those years, they believe school effectiveness should be the right way to improve educational work or educational administration. I'm telling you all this because I want to give you an historical idea of the processes that brought all of us here today, okay, in the field of now, the 90s. In the 90s, we no longer call it educational administration. No. It's not educational administration anymore. It is educational leadership. Wow. Can I be cynical? Jose and Carmen, can I be? Am I? Oh, the woman from the Ministry of Education. May I? Okay. Okay. But why I'm cynical? Because let's tell people that leadership is more what we call a glorified, some kind of glorification of our work. But in order to be a leader, it's more than say, I'm the school principal, okay? I always tell my students in Israel, most of the principals in the primary education are women, okay? Most of the principals, and 70% of the high school principals are women too, in the non-religious education system, okay? In the secular education system. And I always tell them, please, don't follow the man. Don't do what a man do when he gets into his new job as a school principal. He looks at the sign, the principal, and his name below. Okay? It is not enough to look every day at the door and say, I'm the principal. In order to be a leader, you don't have to put your name on the door. Everyone will feel the leader is there. They will feel it in their bones, which means that leadership is something beyond what we really think it is. It's something beyond. And again, teacher evaluation. Now we have to evaluate teacher. Now we have to be strict about evaluation. We have to look at them. We have to observe the classroom. We have to say, yeah, teachers, you have to follow A, B, C, D. If not, you are not a good teacher. It reminds me, a teacher, she was around 60 years old when I interviewed her 20 years ago. She was a math teacher in a primary education. She was the best teacher for at least 30 years in a school. Every parent in the middle, it was a high middle class community, and they know what they want, you know, high middle class. And in Israel, there is no private education, only public. And she said, you know what happened to me? I say, what? You know, it's a story. I have to be polite. I have to interview her. So I said, what? And she said, you know, I've been teaching math for so many years, and everyone is happy. But now a young female principal came in, and she wanted me to change my teaching method. I usually teach from the blackboard and all the class with me. Now she wanted me to move to what we call group teaching, okay? Collective teaching, teaching of group of 6 students together, 6 pupils together. So you know what I did? I reorganized the class to 6 groups, and I still teaching from the blackboard. Why? Because this is the best way to do. So this is the time when they believe that they have to change. Everything to change. The reality is not good. If you don't change the miserable, the bad teaching methods of your teacher, you are a bad educational leader. Okay, leader. Don't forget leader. Say it like the businessmen people say. Even in your country, businessmen, they are serious. Okay? Okay. Okay. Okay, so I see it's something pathological. Okay? So gender, of course, they started talking. And I will end with the first millennium, the second millennium. Okay? What we can learn, and so they talked about moral and ethical and anti-racist, and now we are talking about distributed leadership, and we have all forms of leadership. So we say that you have so many, you have nothing, okay? Which means that what are we talking about? Every principle should be distributed, moral, social justice, participative. Did I forget anything? Yeah, I'm sure I did, okay? I forgot. Can you find any one person in life who can be everything we expect him or her to be? No, of course not. But this is the time. Let's if I could say it in English, I can, but leadermize. I mean, make everyone leader, okay? Leadermize education, leadership, every principle. Evaluation, change, you see, it repeats. But remember, these are the values only of some parts in the world, a very dominant one. A very dominant one, yet represent a culture of something else. We know it. Does it mean it's our? Let's give you an example. For example, let's talk about family. Does the family play a key role in Chile also? I mean, the mother. Yes? The mother still, okay? Any fight between the husband and his mother-in-law, any fight sometimes? No, not in Chile. But in the rest of the world, you can find some fights, okay? So the young husband and his mother-in-law, a story of love. Okay? So this is something more universal. So you can say, but if you live in a collective society, it means that you are part of community. And if you are part of community, okay, a real community, no virtual community like in our days. A real community, it means that you see the world in a slightly different way. And it means a lot. Just and give you an example. In our principle in Israel, we have 1.5 million Arab people who are citizens of Israel, not Palestine, Israel. When they manage their school, when they run the school, they can't ignore their extended family. They can't ignore their community. If they ignore their community, they have no home to come back, to go anymore, because their family will boycott. So can they make rational decisions? I doubt it, okay? So this is one example of many. Okay, let's move on. So what we learned for now, these are the topics. Wonderful topics, okay? Okay, that's what we all have been educated to believe is true. I am not against this topic. I am against any blind adoption of ideas, any blind adoption of idea. I am in favor of critical thinking. That's what I am. I don't want to adopt any idea that contradicts the values and culture of my community. Because I believe my community has developed throughout the years many good ideas. And it doesn't mean that my ideas or the ideas of my communities are bad and the ideas of United States or England are good. No, I can't accept this assumption. Okay? So if we believe all this, am I okay with time right now? Okay, I have enough, yeah, okay. So let's talk about from universal to local knowledge production in our field. So now I would like to urge you to think in a different way. I would like to urge you to think, I'm not in England, I can get rid of it. Yeah, I'm not in England. Okay, so I will get rid of it because it's getting hot. In England I can't, but here I can. Okay, thanks, Carmen. Okay, so I would like to emphasize why we all need or must not forget the context. Okay, the time of the pioneers, what they thought, the pioneer in the United States, what they thought, let's establish a field called educational administration. And they believe that what they create is beyond context, is universal. Every principle in the world should adopt the same principles or the same ideas. That's what they thought. And what was real science? Generalizations. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you have an Hispanic community in New York. They have to follow the majority. They have to do everything the other people in New York does, regardless of their culture. Let's predict predictability, okay? Let's predict everything. And discovery of human laws. There are human laws. In those here, they didn't understand that there are no human laws. Even what we today see as what we call forbidden. For example, anthropologists found some communities in which there were many things that I can't even tell them today because I will feel embarrassed, okay? So even this was not, and they were not perverts, okay? In their culture, they were not perverts. So, a postmodern, there are no universal conditions under which theory is scientific, an awareness of multiple realities, okay, including multiple theories, and cultural and social diversity, different modes of governance. If we accept this side of the slide, we grow up in something in our understanding of education administration. Because it means that, yes, we want to adapt something from here. Yes, we want to check the relevance of their ideas to our works, to our policy, to our preparation, to our management. But we do it very carefully because we believe that there is no one reality in the world. There is no one truth. There is no something that is better than the others. If you go to Africa and you see a teacher in a cabin with 70 or 80 or 100 pupils with a stick in his head, not because he's going to hit everyone there, because this is a symbol of power of the elderly people. And he's there and we say, how can they learn like that? And they can. It means that there is an African philosophy of education that is unique to Africa, okay? That is unique to Africa, and it is working because if not, many communities would have disappeared in Africa. They wouldn't be able to survive because what is the major goal of education? Socialization, okay? No one in the world wants his kids to be entirely different from him or her. So before we go to teach them high-tech, we want them to be polite in the way we want them to be polite. Okay? We sometimes forget this special issue, this small issue. If you know, in Israel at least, or in the United States, of course, or in England, when parents interferes in the schoolwork, it usually, I mean, not the crazy one. No, the crazy one, they interferes all the time. I'm talking about the normal people, when they feel their own values are threatened, are being threatened by the school, by the educational, by Ministry of Education. They feel that this is not education. I can tell you now that in Israel, there are some attempts of religious associations to influence the secular education. And in the upper middle class communities, parents said, not in our school. They will not get into our schools. If we want our kids to be either Muslim or Jews, everyone in his religion, but we don't want religious people to tell our kids what is a real Jew or a real or a true or correct, I would say, correct Christian, correct Jew is. We don't want them. So this is a kind of understanding. We can understand from this story that people want school to be something like them. And you know what makes parents to oppose an educational change? Just an idea. In one of our cities several years ago, they tried to do what we call mixed-aged classes. I mean, preschool 1 year at the age of 5 and the age of 6, they together, and then the second grade alone, and then the third and the fourth grade together, and the fifth and the sixth grade together. Parents said, no, this is not school. You know why they say that? Because they learned that school should be divided according to grades. And they opposed it, and the mayor in that city gave up. He canceled the change. Okay? So this is an idea. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about culture if I want to elaborate on our argument. So what is culture? So sociologists, anthropologists, they divided between two kinds of cultures. Okay? One is what we call traditional. It's more power distance, high uncertainty of avoidance, more collectives, more dictatorship, what we call, okay? More authoritative or even authoritative, which is more than authoritative. They believe everything is connected to the group. They believe that there should be a highly centralized decision-making. And they believe in most of the world today that this is the right way to control people. In many parts of Asia, in many parts of Africa, I'm sure also in Latin America in some parts, okay? The people believe that there should be a strong leader. Remember leader, I said leader before, so now it's a strong leader. And see what happened. Our English people came to us and say, no. You need shared decision-making. You need participative decision-making. But I am subordinate. I am a follower. I don't want to be involved in decision-making. Because since I was a child, not me personally, of course, because since I was a child, my father told me what to do, my uncle told me. So I'm not here to judge if it's good or bad. But before you want to change the kind you teach people how to manage their school, you have to change the society, and I'm not sure it's easy to change society. Now, I'm not talking about Chile. I didn't say Chile is on the traditional side. I know Chile and Israel belong to the OECD, okay? But I'm talking about societies. Does Chile close to here or to here in some aspect? I can tell you that Israel, in many respects, goes to collectivistic, but in some others, to here, okay? Low power distance. So it's not white or black dichotomy, it's not. But it tells us something about the way people think. It takes us out of education, out of the literature about educational leadership, and tell us, look, it says, people, remember, individualism is not universal. And you know what? I'm not sure individualism is a good idea. Because I see what happened in my neighborhood. I don't know my neighbors. I don't know so many of them. Okay? Does it good? No. Maybe I would like to be part of a community. But I was born in a country which is highly individualistic in many respects, in my area, in Tel Aviv, okay? I'm sure that in Arab villages in my country, it's more collectivistic. So I'm sure that in Chile, in rural areas, people are more collectivistic than in urban areas. So if we understand this, we see how the picture is complex. It is very complex. I can't just come and say, principals, from now on, you change your leadership style from X to Y just because I read a good article written in Anglo-American country, okay? And I'm not against Anglo-American countries. Because their dominance, I must criticize this dominance, okay? And say, hey, it's not what we call, it's not set in stone. It's not the Bible, okay? Okay, aha. What should non-Anglo-American researcher in AA do then? So what is our role, okay? Something that I've written extensively throughout the years and practiced myself in my classes, okay, in the university. Okay? Question. First, the people who are sitting here now, in my view, you are all able to question the reality. Otherwise, we wouldn't meet today. Am I right? You are against what I say? Okay? So I'm sure you agree with me. So the first step is to question the relevance of trendy, be it Anglo-American or the moon, I don't care. It can come from the moon, okay? I don't care. Anglo-American, I say because this is the dominant area now, but not because I have something against. And I'm married, my wife is American, so I have to be careful, okay? So in this sense, I say, is participative leadership ideal and applicable everywhere? No. No. It can't be ideal everywhere. It can be ideal maybe in my own values, but not in others' values. It doesn't mean to run a school in Africa, the best way to do it is to forget the community, forget the people, and do what we want. And you know what? There are many articles today that say, hey, World Bank, hey, UNIFES, hey, United Nations, you waste billions of dollars for nothing. Because we see the reforms in many developing countries, they fail, and they tend to fail. And if you see the reform, it is never what the planners planned it to be, or the World Bank planned it to be. So we see. Resist and criticize blind transfer of policies. You can't say, I want this policy because it has been produced in United States. No, you can't. Because our teachers in the class, they resist. Are more of the teachers in this country women? Yeah, women. Okay. You know what's the difference between men and women? One difference, okay? There are many. I always tell my wife that I'm so happy. She is from Venus and I am from Mars, okay? I always tell her this is lovely to be married when we come from two different worlds, okay? There is a reason to argue, to fight, okay? Not fight physically, of course, okay? So the reason I say it is because when we look at people, when we look at I forgot what I wanted to say before, but okay, it happens. But because my mind took me when it comes to marriage, you forget the others. But okay, but look at the situation here. I can't transfer things blindly. I can't come and say, yeah, this is better. This is not. This is worse. I can't do it, and I must. It's like, you know what? It's like marriage in many respects. We can't come and say, yeah, I don't know how it is here, but in Israel, many women, they always say to their husbands, I wish you could change. Nothing here? You see, culture is different, okay? So people, there are many fights sometimes. I don't know how it's here, but unfortunately in Israel, there is a high rate of divorce now, okay? and in many other Western countries. But when you look at this, you say, can I adopt a form of marriage from another country? No, I can't. Okay, I can't. The marriage is something that has been formed by our country, by our religion, by our culture, okay? So look how deep it is. And create here a knowledge base that is tightly connected. I say it, beliefs, and so on. Okay? If you study a classroom, one classroom, and you say this teacher is like every teacher in the world, your results are not going to be good. This is very simple. Okay, so in my view, you have to think, okay, do this and do that. I mean, if you come and say, I have higher power distance, high uncertainty, so yeah, autocratic leadership is something that I would expect to find, even if I don't like it. Even if I say, no, it's not good, but it's good to the community. It's good to the community, and now I'm writing a book about reforming education in developing countries. And I reviewed many articles, empirical articles about reforms in developing countries. Nothing to do with Israel and Chile, okay? And you know what I found? That most of the studies reported one thing, failure. Failure. I read also in French about the French African to see. Maybe it's only in the English speaking, in English articles. No. So you see that many of them say, just give you an example. The United Nations, the World Bank, they encouraged schools to change from teacher-focused instruction to child-focused instruction. Is it also here? Okay. Does it work? Usually, does it work in your classrooms? All the teachers became child-oriented, child-focused in their instruction? I doubt it. Now, let's analyze the meaning of that. Here, I can say, yeah, half and half. In Israel, I can say half and half. But think about a culture whose respect to the adult, to the old person, is part of life, like in most Arab countries, in most African, in most Asian countries, in the Far East. Go to China and see it. Yeah, it's changing, I know, but not also for good, okay? Not also sometimes for bad. So when you look at this and you say, can they really practice child-centered instruction? And most of the paper, most of the research on this change in developing countries says, no, they don't. So what they do, now I remember what I wanted to say, the difference between men and women. Women in all history have tended to resist silently. Have you ever remembered a demonstration, a violent demonstration of women against something? And the police came with and everything? Very rarely, okay? Women, throughout the history, told their men, you are the man in the family. I have never seen such a man like you. I just read what anthropologists wrote, okay? So if you're against it, not me, I've never found it, okay? So anthropologists told us that women tended to resist silently. To tell you the truth, in many traditional societies, women are stronger than men. But they will never say it publicly. Now, you remember that most of the teachers are female? We call it silent resistance. Women will never say to the supervisor, no, we are not going to practice the new reform. Most of the women, okay, I can't say most of them. Will they? Will they practice it? No. They will find the ways, like now talking about male teacher, there are many studies that show that men in teaching adopt the female culture, okay? So they follow the women many times. But what it means is that the policymakers are sure the reform is working, but when the teacher closed the door, nothing is working the way policymakers plan to, okay? So in this, if you don't use the ideas, the beliefs, the concept from your culture, don't expect them to be part of your education, okay? So I gave you just one idea, and remember this, emotion. I would like to say something about emotion, because in the recent year I've been studying emotion, in teaching emotion and educational leadership, because I believe that the neoliberalism tried to take us away from emotions and thought that teaching is only a cognitive practice. But no, teaching is first and foremost an emotional practice. I remember my time as a teacher. I was in my 20s, okay? I studied in university and I wanted to make a living, so I went to teaching. I started teaching in the school, in a high school in which I studied, because they invited me. The Arabic teacher, it's called in Israel, he went to reserve in the army for 1 month, and they wanted someone. I was in BA, in my undergrad studies, and I came and taught Arabic, and then stayed 7 years to teach sociology, psychology, and Arabic. And I remember this period with good memories. Why? I give you an example. I was young, 22, 23, so not far away from the age of my students. They were in the 11th grade, in the 12th grade. And I remember one student. He was 16 years old. Okay, 16 years old, the time when they discover, before of course, but now they can afford themselves to say, women, girls, look at me, girls, okay? The time of discovering the girls more and more. So he was what we wrongly say, naughty boy. Naughty boy, okay? That's what teachers usually say about them. So he used to get late to class. Why? Because he wanted everyone to see his new pants, the last fashion, okay? The last war in the fashion. He wanted everyone to see his shirt, and he used to walk. You know how they get late? You know how kids get late when they want you to look at them? They walk like this. Okay? Something like this. They don't go like this. Okay? So I called him and said, you're a joker, and I love you. You're a joker. I want you to be my assistant. He said, what? I said, yeah. I have a chair. You see, the teachers say, here is the blackboard. Today it's not a blackboard. Today everything is computerized, but in those years. And from now on, you sit next to me. Why? Because every time I feel I'm tired of talking endlessly, you are going to say a joke to the class or to tell a funny story. Okay? He was so enthusiastic. He came right away to the class, to the table. I could do it in those years because nobody told me how I was supposed to teach. Nobody. And then he sat, and one day his mother came to me in the Parents' Day and said, I don't understand. Why didn't you call me? All the other teachers called me. Isn't my son in your class anymore? I say, no, he is. He's the informal leader of my class. That's why I didn't call him. So years later on, when I grew up and started to understand the place of emotions in teaching, I realized that what I did was to tell him, not non-verbally of course, but with my body language, I accept you. I am empathic to your needs. I even love you. I even like you. Something that teachers should say when they talk about under the age of 18 people, okay? So which means that you cannot. Now, if people came to measure my teaching using accountability, they would never be able to judge me correctly because emotion. Now, emotion plays a key role in many traditional society who believe that rationality is bad and emotion is good. I believe both are important. So this is only one example why, okay? So questions for all of us. What is the academic's role, the faculty member's role in promoting education in his own community? We can't say, I contribute to the literature in English or in Spanish, but the same paper in Spanish I could publish in American. So what is your contribution to the practice in Chile? I want you to help Chile to improve it's educational administration, educational system. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me? Yes? Do you agree? Yeah, I'm sure you agree. I'm here, you say supportive, okay? I'm supportive, okay? So it means that you have to think about Chile. Can we as academics in the ivory tower do anything to improve education in our country? How? If we don't, someone in the government one day will say, why do we need to invest money in departments of educational leadership? If we do make a difference, where do we want to find ourselves? As part of the herd, to go after the shepherd and say, yes, shepherd, whatever you say, yes, shepherd, whatever you say, I will be there. I'm not professional. I do whatever you want. Or we want to be the shepherd, the head, the one who said, Minister of Education, from now on, the research should focus on one or A, B, C to improve, because this is the only way to improve the work of teachers / middle managers / school principal / inspector / pupils and parents. Oh, I always forget parents because in Israel they are very, very much annoying, okay? I don't know how it is here. Are we as academics supposed to change reality or whether to explore it? If we work in educational administration, we should be intended to do both, okay? We can't afford ourselves staying in the ivory tower. I would like to give you another example, okay? You see, I'm patriot here, you see, okay? I'm patriot. And I would like to talk about Chile a little bit, because before I came here, I have read some pieces, some of them, or even most of them, I must say, written by Jose and Carmen, so thanks for writing in English. I would come here without finding any professor who immigrated from Latin America to Israel or his family who speaks Spanish. I didn't have to do it. You translated or wrote your papers in the language I can understand you, so thanks. So, okay, let's talk about Chile. Okay, I believe that local research. This is my own reflection upon your work. Okay, so I take on the outsider's point of view. My advantage now is that I'm not part of what's going on in Chile. So I can look at the things from outside like you could do if you came to Israel and reflected on my work. Okay? It's, you know, that many things are happening to us during our lives that we are not aware to until a crisis erupts and we say, oh, what happened to us? So, should develop theoretical, I said it, okay, but what? Shouldn't adapt theories model, okay, we say that. Well, so that's something that I said, I'm not going to repeat. What I do want to emphasize now is let's look at the educational system in Chile. What I read was that principals can work in public or subsidized private schools. For you, this is reality. For me, it was a surprise, which means that every country has its own uniqueness. In Israel, rich people tried to establish a private school, and the government fought legally against their attempt and won. The school was closed finally. Okay? So this fight was part of a cultural belief or a belief in public education in Israel. And then I realized that most students study in private education, or let's call them half private education, because if it's funded by the government, it's half. Okay? Policies in recent years made private education more available. And then I saw to myself that what people with principals in public education need more than ever is more knowledge about educational marketing. Because marketing your school is different than marketing your factory or your company. It's different. You can't market your school as if it was a company, a business enterprise. Then I understand that there is more accountability. So I thought to myself, wow, principals in this country, I wouldn't be instead of them. I wouldn't substitute them. they have to change everything within 5 years. After 1 year, they are judged. Okay? Okay, at least I have the policy say. I'm not talking about reality, I'm talking about. But you can't judge a principal after 1 year. Because all the studies in psychology showed that to develop a managerial identity, you need at least 2 years. It's like the boy, when our first oldest child was born. I remember that when my daughter, our first daughter was born, she was very tiny. She was 2 kilo and 300, something like that, gram. So we came back home after 2 days in the hospital, and we set the clock to wake up. Needless to say, we woke up much earlier than we thought, because then after 1 hour, we heard, wah, okay? You can't forget this cry, wah. So, but this was the way we had to establish an identity of parents. So it takes newly appointed principal to build their managerial identity at least 2 years. And here in Chile, they are expected to improve school or to increase the number of students or increase student enrollment very fast. So I thought to myself, if it's not mission impossible, okay? That's very interesting. So I would like to read one of your future research that yours or other in English that study this phenomenon, okay? Because if you did it here, I would like to know how you made it, okay? But the question is, what do I do with this? That's something that I say to myself, you must pay attention to it. You must find out the factors affecting success or failure in the first year, not of American or Israeli newly appointed principals, but of principals in Chile, but not one study, many. Because if you come to the Ministry of Education and say, listen, it's not working, they can't do it, nobody can do it, look at this, maybe you will influence some policy changes. Okay? But this is a topic that should be learned in your country, not in mine, because in my country, after 3 years or after 2 years, they become tenured in the principals. They are tenured anyway because of strong trade unions in Israel. But they become school principal and nobody come and tell them, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. No, no one. Okay, what else I learned about your country when I thought about your country? I learned that new personnel are expected to be instructional leaders 1 minute after they sat on the principal's chair. No way. No way. There is no connection, unfortunately, 100% connection, there is, but very tiny one, between good teaching and good leadership. You can be the best teacher in your school and very bad principal after that. Have you ever met such principals in Chile? I'm sure you did, okay? Why? Because not every good teacher will be a good principal. Because to teach by myself is one profession or one way of professional way or one profession, and to lead others to teach better is a different skill. And you don't grow up with this skill. We are not born to be leaders. Leadership is another, what we call, to learn from practice. So even to be an instructional leader takes time, because what is the time? How do we call the time, the first 2 or 3 years in principalship? A time of survival. You first have to learn the technical work before you come to change the working habits, the teaching methods of other principals. So theoretically, it's good. The paper, you can write on the paper everything you want. Believe me, no paper will resist you. Okay? No paper will come and say, don't write it down, don't. Nobody. Okay? But if you try to practice this policy directive, the principal is doomed to fail. Because I can't believe that the people in Chile or the principal in Chile are entirely different from principals elsewhere. We are all human beings, and we all need some what we call gradual development. We can't develop ourselves in one day. It's like asking a baby after 1 month to walk. First to crawl, first to cry, first to fall down, and then to walk. It's something connected to physical development. Yeah, it's something connected to mental development. You have to see, to learn, to feel disappointment, to feel anger, to fight with some teachers, to want every new principal says, there was a time during the first year I just wanted to run away. Okay? Just wanted to run away. Even in your paper, Carmen, about newly appointed, I saw some notions of this, okay? About Chile. So it is. So if I look at it, I say, yeah, my government, my Minister of Education, I want to focus my empirical efforts on this. Because principle, it's, okay? You see? You see? That's what you say, not me, okay? Yeah, because I'm not surprised they feel tension, okay? But I believe that it's our role to tell policymakers, change it. Otherwise, this will lead to all this. Empowered people are supposed, in theory, to recruit better teachers. How can you recruit a better teacher before you have developed your better managerial skills, your better leadership skills in the future? You can't. You have to understand how to recruit people. And you know how we all learn how to recruit people? By trial and error. By trial and error. And according to the good school leadership framework, principals should be trained in many things. Hallelujah. But when I train somebody, it doesn't mean he is ready to practice what I trained him in reality. Okay, am I okay with time, or tell me? 10 minutes? Okay. Well, 10 minutes, so let's start to sum up. 10 minutes, it's okay to sum up. And from my experience, don't tell the organizer 10 becomes 15, so it's okay. Okay? Okay? So the role of a principal preparation program is to make its participant better prepared for their job in Chile. Okay? We are not going to export principles to other countries from Chile now, okay? The role in Chile, I believe, after reading your literature, the one in English, of course, is to be a marketer, instructional leader, human resource manager, and many, many. I added to learn how to survive, the first years, to learn how to face. I'm telling you, everyone who works with newly appointed principals, talk with their spouses too, okay? Their spouses too. Why? Because they need much support from their spouse. Why? Because they are going to face high levels of pressure and stress, needless to say, and what types of context. So please, reconsider including more local understandings, contents in your preparation. Don't imitate contents from elsewhere just because they are written in English. Don't do it. And my first insight, we need to increase principal candidates' self-awareness. First, start with what psychologists say, consciousness. Consciousness. By talking with our future principals, or any principal, they can be also in service principals, okay? Practicing principals, it's okay. By talking with them about, everyone take it to what training he works in, okay? He or she works in. But when I look at this, I say self-awareness. Analyze current context in Chile, first and foremost. Because if I sit in your class, and whatever you say is disconnected to my own work, the next step will be to close my ears, okay? To close my ears. It's irrelevant. I don't need, our brain has enough knowledge to process. We don't want to process things that are irrelevant to us. Second, to sharpen systematic thinking, okay? And creativity. Why creativity? Creativity is not related to education, it's related to psychology. Because only creative people can judge reality. You know, Newton Newton, who invented so many things, he stayed alone. He has stayed alone all his life. This is a very extremist example, and I don't want any one of us to stay alone. But maybe in order to invent, you have to detach yourself from current reality. To sharpen them, to provide them with models for solving complex problems, but emphasize cultural values, okay? If I come and say, from now on, use LGBTQ, there is nothing like that. I've just invented this, okay? Because many like to write their models in initials. LBQT, okay? So it sounds very important. So, if you use it, ask yourself, do we really solve problems in Chile in this way, in our families? Okay? Do we? And just ask yourself if you ever solved problem with your mother-in-law in this way. If you didn't, change it. Okay? Change it because it's not working in your culture. And of course, give them techniques to deal with day-to-day problems. Don't provide them with solutions, let alone, or especially not solutions from other countries, okay? But give them some techniques, because what new principles, if your company new principle needs, what they need is something to help them float over the water. They feel they are going to, to be sunk into the ocean, into the water, and day after day. You have to help them. My second insight, survival. How can we prepare new principles? So I thought about what's going on in Chile. And I thought that the most important thing is not vision building. Vision building is wonderful. But you know what happened in Israel with all this issue of vision? Many times I visit school. The first thing the school principal shows me is, I call it the grave. The grave, the momentum, okay? What I mean is a wall with letters on it. This is the vision. And I think to myself, if this is the first thing you want to show me, I don't envy your teachers. Why? Because the first thing you have to show me is not your vision, is the classrooms. This is the heart of the school, the classroom. And I don't like to see principals who tell me, see how quiet it is in my school. I don't want quiet schools, at least in my culture. I want vivid school. I want vitality. I want children talking, singing, and sometimes screaming, yeah. This is their childhood. I want a live atmosphere in our class. But I want, because this is part of my culture, which I believe is not far away from Latin American one in this respect, okay? So when we look at this, I thought, so what are the message I would encourage you to use? Life story interviews. Bibliographical or autobiographical interview is wonderful to trace what happened to people. Or observation in various schools, project management, okay? Discuss with them impression. Let them talk about emotions as long as your culture allows people to talk about emotions. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to tell you how to judge or how to check what you are supposed to do before you do it. And if your culture doesn't believe in emotion display, don't talk about emotion display. Maybe you have to talk about how my tendency to suppress emotions hurts my job and how I'm supposed to face it. But if your culture encourages people to express emotion, so you must talk with them how to regulate their emotions effectively, morally, and so on. So you see, it's your responsibility to make knowledge suitable to your students. It's your responsibility. I'm here just to say that you know what is most important to Chile or in Chile. And my third, I think it's the last one, but I can't remember. Okay? So my third insight was hurry up and learn to be marketer. Why? Because if public education faces private reputation, may I add, in a very unfair game, okay? That's what I read from one of you, I remember. Yeah, I think from your comparison of private and public school principals. What they need to do is how to survive in terms of student enrollment. How they have to learn how to build a good school image, how to change marketing techniques. I hate to think about educators as marketers. I hate it. But I can't afford myself to tell you don't do it, because this is the game here in Chile, also in some parts of Israel, okay? This is the game. So if you want to help them, write something in Spanish about educational marketing. This is, for example, what they need, okay? So here again, the literature, we have literature, and we need also video to successful, simulation. I could go on and go on, but this is not my intention to talk about every methodology. This is something I'm sure you will find very fruitful in future meetings, okay? And I'm not going to tell you nothing about it because I'm short of time. This is important, but you know, importance is a relative issue. That's what I wanted to tell you. In your language, muchas gracias.
Mi pregunta respecto a cómo integra en su visión las transformaciones que pueden producir o que están produciendo las tecnologías en la gestión escolar.
Okay, I hope I understood the question, because if I understand well, I stand here. If I understand well, I don't know what you mean by traditional school, by the way, so I have no idea. Because this is, again, something very contextual. I can understand traditional in a different way than you are. But let's go to a higher level, to a more abstractive level, one. If a school principal comes to a school which is traditional according to my mind, okay, as the way I see it, because I've never been in a traditional school in Chile, okay? If, Jose, help me if there is something else that I have to elaborate. And if he comes to such a school, now, from my point of view, he is now in a very unique context. Now, if he is requested by the Ministry of Education to monitor, as you said, to monitor, and he is trying to monitor the teachers in a way that is anti-traditional to what they know or believe, I believe that the monitoring process will be very ineffective. Is this what you meant? Did you hear? Okay. Okay? Now, it means that the principal should gap between policy directive and his school. This is the role of the principal. He shouldn't come and say, oh, if I don't do the same directive, I will be kicked out. If this is the way he looks at the job, I feel so mercy at him. Oh, he's a miserable principal. But if he comes and say, I'll give you an historical story. During the World War II, there was a big Russian general. His name was Zhukov. Okay, Zhukov, I don't know Russian, so anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, Zhukov. He was the only general who was never afraid of Stalin. Stalin, before World War II, he slaughtered his army. Many commanders, many chiefs in his army. He came to them and he used to tell him exactly the reality. He never did. And he is now in the history of Russia the best general who brought the victory over Nazis Germany, which means that principals with courage can do the indispensable, the vital gap between policy directive and local needs, local habits. Now, it's something the Ministry of Education should know, should acknowledge, that there should be an interruption of their directives. I hope I understood you and what you said.
Durante su presentación ha enfatizado mucho la necesidad de formar líderes o de proponer cambios que estén dentro de la cultura local, que respeten las prioridades o las convicciones de la gente. Ahora bien, ¿qué sucede cuando parece necesario impulsar un cambio, incluso cuando este va en contra de la cultura local, porque esa cultura ha sido impuesta en un momento histórico determinado? Y quiero dar un ejemplo muy breve. Hoy en día, muchos apoderados, muchas familias se oponen al término de la selección, porque por razones históricas prefieren que sus hijos solo se relacionen con algunos estudiantes y no con otros. Pero parece lógico como país avanzar hacia un sistema más integrado, donde todos puedan convivir. Entonces, ¿cómo impulsar cambios que de alguna forma van en contra de la cultura imperante, pero cuando una visión de país cree que es necesario?
Okay, this was the first question, I guess, okay? So, because you say two questions. One of the things that we teach principals or any other trainers in management is politics. Politics of schools, politics of organization. If you are afraid, not you personally, I mean the principal. If the principal is afraid of things like negotiation, politics, let's call it not manipulation, because manipulation is a bad word, but let's call it in the positive side, okay? If the principal has good political skills, he or she can overcome the barrier you have just mentioned. Politics, I remember talking with one of our parliament members. He told me, politics is a dirty thing, but it's the only way adult people can negotiate each other without the weapon. Which means that, for example, you gave an example of selection, if I understood you well, about selection. Now, let's start with a community of snobs, okay? People who are snob. I'm sure you have some communities like that. Now, they want selective schools, only selective. And the government comes, I understand now, and say, no more selection. This is the same process in Israel, okay? No more selection. Now, you think yourself, I'm going to face this. So, first, this is something connected to the law, so the principal has nothing to do with this. Second, this is something that I believe the principal alone can't handle. This is something that is beyond the principal. But let's talk about tiny things. Principles that should monitor, as say, the principles that should prevent any dropout, even though the child is very disruptive. His behavior is impossible. This is why I told that principals should be creative. There are many creative ways to run school. Education is the most interesting and challenging profession we ever met in the world. Why? Because there are endless routes to educate kids. And there is no kid who was born bad. There are many kids. Now, I'm with you when you say there are some that needs other settings. Yes, of course. But within this regulation, if you establish good relations with the parents, if you try to say, let's find communal ways to handle this issue, if you come and say, so I can't tell you everything now, in 1 minute, but I can tell you that good responsible, there is a literature about highly effective principles, what we call them stars. And these principles know how to balance contradictory requirements, okay? They know how to do it. You can say they know how to be charming. They know how to negotiate. They know how to tell everyone what he or she wants to hear. Yes. But all in all, they run the school and everybody is satisfied. So yes, there are many ways. Now, I always tell my students, if you are afraid of politics, if you feel that you can never swim in the political pool, in the political sea, don't be a manager. because politics is an integral part of any management. It can be the head of year, okay, or the head of the subject matter, or the teacher, because he has or she has to manage the school. So this is the skills that I expect. Yeah, talk about politics and tell them politics is not a bad word in any organization, as long as it's for good purposes, okay?
Buenos días. Mi pregunta es la siguiente. ¿Cuán formables o modificables incluso pueden ser esas competencias emocionales para los líderes escolares? Y si es que es posible, ¿cómo se hace?
Okay, lovely question. Yesterday, I had a meeting with the teachers or in teaching education. Yeah, that's what we call it, yeah? They asked me the same question. We talked about only emotion, 90 minutes about emotion in teaching. And I told them, look, first, we have to talk about it. We have to start the lesson with definitions of emotion. Then we have to ask, what is the difference between feeling and the emotion display? Okay? Because we are not talking with principals or with any other middle managers about emotion from a psychiatric point of view. Even I can find you some principles that must go to a psychiatric. Yeah, there are, okay? But it's not that's what I mean, okay? I'm talking about emotion display and suppression. Let's take, for example, a cabin crew in the airplane, a cabin crew. There are so many annoying passengers, but they must smile at them, okay? So they are paid to regulate their emotions many times in contrast to their authentic feelings. Now, do I want our teacher to fake emotions? Not always. But yes, I don't want them to insult, also the principal to insult teacher or to insult. Even if I'm very angry at this teacher, I don't want to insult him. So what we do is first talking about reading papers. Then we take quotes. We take quotes because now we have many qualitative papers about emotions. So we take quotes of principals, of teachers, and analyze them in our class, in the university. And then we send the students to talk, to conduct an interview with principal or teachers or middle managers about many things about leadership style and also some about emotions. And we ask them to analyze the place of emotions within the life story of the principal, and we gain lovely insights about what to do, not to do, how do I develop. Because after all, if we don't control emotions or if we don't pay attention to emotions, we are going to be victims of burnout by ourselves. Burnout, stress, all emotions in our work. So if we want to teach other emotions, we first have to go with them to a hike of emotions, feeling, affects, and all the other things that are there. What are the factors affecting emotions? What are desirable emotions versus undesirable emotions? Listen, I didn't see positive and negative emotions. Why? Because emotions are highly contextualized concept also. What's bad for you is good for me, okay? In my culture, in your culture. So I noticed, for example, that in your culture, when you see each other, you give a hug, and one side of something like a kiss. Am I okay? But in other culture, I noticed that they do it twice. And in other culture, in England, for example, if you do it, you go to the jail because, okay, you are in a jail, you attacked someone, okay? So it's something very cultural that you, in England, I always check hands, that's all, okay? No more than that. So many times with gloves. So this is something, okay, that is very cultural. So there are many techniques, and I can send some papers to Jose so to distribute, but it's in the awful language English, you know, so I have not seen Spanish. Okay.
Gracias. Despedimos con un aplauso entonces al profesor Oplatka. Thank you.